SM440 stuff with adaptations. So the mains comes in, the 110 transformer's outside because it's a point heating transformer. And then this is rack A, this is power and distribution. This rack here, B, is all the cable battens. And then this one here is mainly track circuits, one or two other bits. Rack D doesn't exist, it's a future expansion. So we put the air conditioner there on the grounds that we decided we weren't going to expand, but we put the cable tray in anyway. And then rack E and rack F and rack G are the relays. So the rails are a bit of a pain because they are not flat, so you lose half the ducting. And they are ex-Glasgow Underground. They're a bit bigger than SM440, so you can get more relays on. And then, so the top row is power distribution, and then effectively there's a row per lever with the various ancillaries around, like the ELDs, that kind of stuff. So what you normally get for a signal is you get the lever follower, followed by a LZR, which is what actually controls the power to the lever lock. So that is if the control system, like the track circuits, the approach locking, all that kind of stuff is clear, the LZR energises, and then that releases the lock on the lever, provided the interlocking on the frame is in the right position. So just because on there it says the lock should be picked, it doesn't mean the lock will be picked. You've got to go to the lever frame for that. And then you get a GR which controls the signal, and the GPR which actually does the motor operation, because you needed more contacts, because the signals, because they're motor operated, they're mainly 2 contacts per thing just for the current load. And then 7A, 7B for the 2 different signals, so depending on the position of the points, which GPR goes off, and then you've got the on proving. And then there's track circuit repeats, because the FR track circuit, it's a closest in style to a HVI track circuit. It's based on a GEC track circuit developed by a guy called Damien Poole, who happened to work for this railway as well. So it uses a 70 volt impulse, and it was compatible with a type of GEC relay that doesn't exist anymore because we've got the catalogue for it, or a standard 1000 ohm track circuit line relay, and we've yet to find a plug-in replacement for it because of the current load isn't sufficient. We think if we're going to replace this with something more modern, it's going to have to be, you can get little non-weld safety critical relays for going and doing motor controls and carriages and things like that Moore Schmidt makes, something along those lines. But there's not a 930 series equivalent that will work because of the characteristics of the shelf type is so different. So what we do is there's what we call an inverter module, which is basically a DC-DC converter, and that sends out a 70 volt supply to the track. There's a transmitter which then creates the pulse, which is then goes down the railway, and it's designed to, because it's 70 volts, it cuts through the rust and it can cope with the fact we've got light vehicles, so it's designed for poor rail conditions. And then at the far end there's another module which cuts the pulses back together and turns it back into 12 volts to go into the shelf type, and then through the contacts we just send, it's on the 50 volt supply, and there's a repeater that actually does stuff. And there's other relays, you can see the ones with the most wires, for example, that's the points stuff where everything is double wire because again for current loading. The points are all signal aspects, PM24 24 volt linear actuator driven point machines, so there's a little current limiter and a reset switch. It's all entirely logical, it's quite well laid out. We put an awful lot of effort into making it look right and keeping it neat and tidy, our volunteer that did all the cable installation pretty much. I think I installed about 3 cables on this site, and they were all 2 cores. I did all the earthing as well. He was a beyond obsessive compulsive, and if you showed him a way things had to be done and told him that was the standard he had to meet, he would meet that standard every single time. And if you tried to deviate from that, would argue about it till the kingdom came. And we like to think that his main job was keeping the rest of us honest, to the point where we had visitors of Network Rail coming in saying, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have cables like this in our relay room? Because you lift up the floor, the loops go all the way to the end. There's so much excess cable, almost more than too much. But if we ever have a problem, we've got more than enough to return it.
Switch on the platform that the drivers use. As you can see, this doesn't get used much. And it's going to be replaced soon. But there's a additional crossing cancel if the CCTV packs up.
Yeah.
Signal can come down here.